I call the honourable member Nikki Kay.
Mr Speaker, I am very pleased to speak on the Waitaki District Council Reserves and Other Land Empowering Bill. The first thing I would like to do is acknowledge the excellent local member, Jackie Dean, and the huge amount of work that she's done to ensure that this bill is taken through Parliament. She's a great local member, and I did hear in some of the other speeches, and I just want to address that some members have gone to the beautiful place of Oamaru to do their own research, and I think that's a great thing if a piece of legislation is going through the House. Now, not all other members on this side have been able to do that, but we have so much confidence in our local member, Jackie Dean, and the work that she has done over several years that we didn't necessarily need to visit, but I do look forward to visiting in the near future. Mr Speaker, I also would like to acknowledge the very competent chair of Local Government and Environment Select Committee, Nikki Wagner, who has worked tirelessly as well with local member Jackie Dean on this bill. Now, as has already been mentioned, this bill deals with several provisions around land. One of them was more controversial, that has already been mentioned. The least controversial were the Palmerston Showgrounds Lot 1 sections, which are more straightforward because they are a revocation of the Reserve Act status. In the case of the Palmerston Showgrounds section, it will allow Waitaki District Council to sell the land to the current lessees. In the case of the Lot 1 section, it will allow Waitaki District Council to regularise the sale of the section to the current registered proprietors and allow title to their property to be unencumbered by any notation relating to the Reserves Act. Now, when we get to the key area that has been the subject of many of the submissions that we've received, Lookout Point, I think it is important to reiterate what both the member Jackie Dean has mentioned, but also the Honourable Annette King. That is that in all of the submissions, you can see the huge amount of work that many members have gone into to ensure that the research has happened. Because if we just go back through the history here of Lookout Point, there was a very, very clear disagreement or misunderstanding or confusion, if you like, that needed to be resolved. That the particular issue was that with regard to Lookout Point, an administrative oversight in 1937 mistakenly vested the land in Waitaki District Council as a reserve. Reserve status and endowment status are two completely separate concepts, and this was not fully appreciated in 1937, and we discussed this at length at Select Committee. And I just want to pay tribute at the moment to the huge amount of work as well, not just by local people in Oamaru, but also by Land Information New Zealand, Ngāi Tahu, the Department of Conservation, the Commissioner of Crown Lands, the Parliamentary Council Office. And what came back, and this is a very clear statement from our report, because I think it does resolve this long-standing issue after lots of research by the community and all government agencies and the local member for Waitaki. I want to read this key statement. Having reviewed their records, Land Information New Zealand and the Department of Conservation are satisfied that treating Lookout Point land as a reserve was indeed a genuine mistake, resulting from the various meanings and legal uses of the word reserve. While we appreciate the sentiment of submitters and acknowledge there is contention on this issue, after receiving advice from Land Information New Zealand and the Department of Conservation, we believe that the land was actually classified as reserves for an endowment in aid of borrowed funds, rather than as a recreation or similar reserve. And for me, that statement summarises what is several years of work by people in the Oamaru community, by the local member Jackie Dean, by numerous government departments, the Primary Production Committee, and I just want to address that because I think it is important at this point as well to not only say has there been research by the community, has our select committee considered at length, it's also important, and the Labour members have gone down to Oamaru, I acknowledge that, and the National members have put a lot of faith in Jackie Dean because we know what a great member she is.
And I've been there.
And Maggie Barry has personally been there as well. And as Annette King said, I think, we will leave no stone unturned, which is incredibly appropriate given that we are talking about Oamaru. But can I just come back to some more of the history, because I think members will be very interested in this. That is that the Primary Production Committee heard submissions on the 7th of May 2009, and Council presented to the committee at the time, and this was the key part of their report, which I think is aligned with our report, but it says, as reported back from the Primary Production Committee, clauses 18 to 20 relate to land in the Waitaki district known as Lookout Point or Forester Heights. The submissions received concern one key issue, whether Lookout Point was mistakenly treated as reserve land under Reserves Acts legislation, or whether the council was attempting to circumvent the law to enable a building development. Now, I think what's really important is that we come back again to that point. No, it's very important, given that so many people have worked on this issue, Mr. Twyford, that we go through this history and we understand that there's been a lot of research by government agencies, the community, the Primary Production Committee, the Local Government Environment Committee, and I know what it's like locally to have an issue that is of controversy. And what I am very confident standing in this House is that we have left no stone unturned. We have had this through several committees in Parliament. There's been so much research on this issue. But the key important point that I want to make is that through several select committee processes, we've ended up with this point to say we're confident in the approach that we've taken with regard to Lookout Point. But what we've said, I think, in the commentary of this bill is that there is the Reserves and Other Lands Disposal Bill before Parliament, and we made this point. We know that Clause 7 in this bill is the same as Clause 20 of the Reserves and Other Lands Disposal Bill, which is currently awaiting its second reading in the House. And what's important is that there is nothing in standing orders that disallows two different bills from having identical clauses in it. And so what I think the conclusion is that in this circumstance, the identical clause can be removed from whichever bill is enacted second by an amendment at the Committee of the Whole Stage of the House. I wanted to raise that point because I think it is very important for this House to understand that so many members across the chamber have cared so much about this issue that we've got two identical clauses in a bill, because we know that it's important to the people of Oamaru to resolve this finally and once and for all. That doesn't mean that every person in the community will be happy, but what it means is that there has been a very, very thorough process with regard to this bill. Again, I want to acknowledge the member for Waitaki, because I think she's dealt with this issue with incredible diligence. She's carried herself well through it, and I think I want to acknowledge the people of Oamaru for the many submissions that they put in. I want to acknowledge the members across the House. I can see Eugenie Sage, I can see the Honourable Annette King. I want to acknowledge Nikki Wagner, the brilliant chair of the Select Committee, and other members of the Local Government Environment Select Committee for the diligent approach that we have taken on this issue. And finally, Mr. Speaker, can I commend this bill to the House to resolve this issue once and for all, so that the people of Oamaru will know that we have left no stone unturned and they can sleep easier tonight. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.